Hello, hello, hello out there in podcast land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, where we talk about horror and science fiction films and the key elements of those films that lift them above the average genre fare. I am here with my friend David Horton. Hello, David.
Hello, Tim.
How's it going out there in the ethereal... I can't even speak. How is it out there in nanospace, wherever?
Well, it's good. You know, no wonder you're having trouble. I mean, it's been a while. You know, we're coming back. This is season 3. We're starting out, and you know, I'm hoping everybody had a good summer vacation and missed us. But
agreed.
Yeah, been doing pretty good. Ready to jump back into this and have some movie fun.
Yeah, season 3. Who'd have thought?
Season 3. I mean, it was interesting. I kind of went back and listened a couple of weeks ago. I went back and listened to the very first podcast we did, the whole one that really didn't have a topic. It was just like meet us kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting listening to it again and listening to how we both, you know, what we wanted it to be and what we wanted to do. And it's continuing to do that. So that's a good thing.
Your choice of the word interesting does not sound like a good euphemism.
Well, you know, we've learned a lot in the ensuing years. So production values have increased. You know, the content has gotten a little better, I think, so to speak. But yeah,
structure, format.
Yep. Structure, format, all those good things. What about you? What have you been doing? How was your summer vacation?
How did I spend my summer? Well, you know, the summer started off, you know, with a bang as far as COVID-19. And I spent a lot of time watching movies and reading, of course. And I wanted to focus on 3, this introductory podcast, our first podcast of season 3, because it kind of ties back to season 1. I went back and watched some of Mike Flanagan's really early films. And when I say early, they're not that early. Some of them were just 6 years ago. But, I watched a movie he did that was, I guess what you would say, his indie that got him discovered. It was a GoFundMe crowdsourcing, is that what it is? Crowdsourcing funded project, crowdfunded project, called Absentia. And then I also watched a mainstream, which I'm assuming was his first mainstream film that was a sequel, actually a prequel to the movie Ouija, called Origin of Evil. I had never watched the original Ouija movie, but I decided I would watch this one since he directed it. And I was pleasantly surprised that it was a prequel, so it went back in time. And then I also, before I dwell on any of them, I watched Oculus, which is the one about the mirror, the haunted mirror.
Yeah.
Ouija and Oculus, he clearly had money to make. Absentia, he had no money, except for crowdfunded money. And Absentia is my favorite of the 3.
Really?
So
okay, why?
It is. Because of the concept, because of the guerrilla filmmaking, because of, you know, how we've talked in the past about how not having the means forces you to be inventive and creative.
Definitely.
There's a lot of that in this movie. You know, we did a 10-part thing on Flanagan with
Hill House.
Haunting a Hill House, season 1. And we talked about how well he can scare you when you're not expecting it. And he does that a lot in Absentia. You just don't expect things, and you see things that you didn't realize were in the background, that kind of stuff. I will talk a little bit about the other two, Ouija, Origin of Evil. You'll be happy to know. Of course, I did not write this crap down, but he uses a lot of the same actresses in his work still. As a matter of fact, some all the way up into Dr. Sleep. But the lead in Ouija, Origin of Evil, is the girl that played Shirley, the woman that played Shirley in Hill House.
Oh, okay. Good one. Good. She's great.
And her daughter, one of her two daughters, the younger one, is the girl that played young Shirley in Hill House.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And then the other, I can't remember what the other daughter did. But then if you go back to Absentia, there is a woman in it that looks a lot like his wife, but it's not his wife. The one that played Theo.
Oh, yeah. My favorite.
But she is the woman that played Poppy in Hill House. So there's a lot of like incestuous casting going on here. He is constantly using and reusing people. Henry Thomas is in Ouija as well. He plays a priest in it.
Well, and we also, I've seen things that, when Blythe Manor comes out, that he's repurposing a lot of Hill House's cast as well. So Shirley is in that, as well as the son, the drug addict one, is in that. But I think it's a good practice. I mean, think about some of the better director types out there that have done that with, have created their cadre of actors that they repurpose all the time. I mean, James Cameron, as much as I'm not the hugest fan, he repurposes a lot of people. So did Mel Brooks. So does, so did Woody Allen. So I kind of like that. It's neat if they're versatile enough to do different characters. If they're just playing the same one, then we get bored really easy, I think. But that's cool, though.
Yeah, when I see these folks, and then I like, especially in his crowdfunded movie, I'm like, these people were looking for a chance too when he was getting his chance, and now that he's like almost repaying the favor. Thanks for being in my movie. Now come be in my movie that I'm making money with. I just think it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
That he goes back to these same folks. Another thing that's really cool about Ouija is that it's set in the 60s. So if you want to get your Madman or your Mrs. Maisel fix, you can get it with this movie as well. It's
sweet.
Got all the production design is set, in the late 60s. I think it's 1967. Mm-hmm. It's not a great movie, but I can see why it was popular as a sequel prequel. And then Oculus, I just wasn't that impressed with Oculus. So.
Okay.
But then going forward, I am impressed because then he started doing Hush. I mean, I think he did Oculus, Hush, and Before I Wake all in the same year. He did like 3 movies in 1 year. I can't remember the exact 3.
Yeah.
And then, and now the rest is history because he's just doing bigger and brighter things.
Yeah, I still have not seen Sleep, but I've heard great things not only from you but from other people, so I'm really curious to watch it.
Well, maybe we'll do it this season.
Maybe we should. Yes. Oh, if we're going to, I might wait.
Yeah. If you were a Patreon subscriber, you'd know.
Because you get the list. Yes.
The list.
Shameless plug for Patreon.
That was a chunk of my summer for you right there, those 3 films.
That's great.
Yeah, what's going on with yours?
That's been basically it. I've been reading a lot of theater, a lot of plays. Ironically, just got in a new play that I'm going to read called The Haunting of Hill House. It's an adaptation of Shirley Jackson done in play form. So I'll be curious to read it and see if it can be scary or if I can maybe borrow any ideas from Mr. Flanagan. But
I hope that they leave all of her subtext in it, like Theo's lesbian tendencies and stuff.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. Mm-hmm.
And also reading a lot of radio dramas, coming out of COVID and everything, and everybody being remotely and socially isolated and distanced and all that. A lot of theater companies and performing arts companies and all that were doing different things, whether it was a staged reading done remotely or things like that. And we've been doing a bunch of radio plays. So I've been reading a lot of those, all the old Inner Sanctums and Suspense and Mercury Theater stuff with Orson Welles. So some cool stuff like that.
Yeah, I saw somewhere where you're doing, or we're doing, Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yes, yeah, did that as an abbreviated version. It was only a 1 hour version, but yeah, just because that particular one and a couple of other of Shakespeare's works are mostly devoted to the language anyway. You don't really have to have a lot of staging to make it work. If we were doing the Scottish play, it'd be totally different. But a show like that kind of works, and it kind of makes you, think about the dialogue again and the poetry and the writing. So yeah, that was fun. Cool. But yeah, stuff like that. Getting my theater on, as I say.
Getting your theater on. Upstage left, y'all.
But what? But I'm kind of excited. I'm like I said, I'm excited to be back with you and back talking movies. And I like the fact that we're kicking off season 3 with a science fiction film. So yay, it's happy. For those of you who don't even know what you're listening to, other than Johnny, you are. The episode the movie we're going to tackle today is Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Came out in 2011. Was written by a husband and wife team, Amanda Silver and Rick Jaffa, and it was directed by Rupert Wyatt. Had James Franco in it, Andy Serkis, John Lithgow, Tom Felton. And the synopsis really is fairly simple. It's a fairly cool, simple story. You basically have a geneticist who is experimenting with drugs to hopefully stop Alzheimer's, mostly due to the fact that his father is suffering from Alzheimer's, so he has a kind of a vested interest in it. In doing so, he accidentally elevates the intelligence of an ape named Caesar, played by Andy Serkis in motion capture, and we'll talk about that. He ends up taking Caesar out of his lab and raising him with his father at his home, along with a primatologist that is the love interest that he meets. But Caesar ultimately ends up in an ape sanctuary, and through that and seeing all of the ills of humanity, he ends up staging essentially an ape revolution and sets up an entire trilogy. This is... I don't know. I guess my first question, Tim, was going to be, would you call this a reboot? It's definitely not a remake, right? So this is a reboot of a franchise.
It's definitely a reboot, but it's really clever the way it plays in to paying homage to the original franchise.
Yes.
They kind of gloss past the fact that Tim Burton tried to reboot it in 2001 with a movie that had horrible reviews and rumored creative differences with the director, because, Tim's kind of got a strong vision, whatever he does.
True, but he also didn't do a good movie at all. That movie was terrible.
No, I haven't seen it. I own it, but I haven't seen it, I think, since it came out. There was a plan to do a sequel to his movie. They kind of left it open-ended, but because of all the problems and the disappointment, they didn't. And then there was a proposed reboot to the franchise, going back to Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, which I believe was the third movie of the original 5. And that is what this movie we're talking about today evolved into. That was tossed around in 2006, and then we eventually got what we have now.
Yes, and so history, I mean, as far as cinema goes, and one of the reasons we picked this movie to do is it's a reboot of a classic, very popular franchise of 5 movies, a television series that was very popular starting in the 60s, and we also covered that. Didn't we do that in season 1? Didn't we do Planet of the Apes in season 1?
We did. It was episode 6 of season 1 for any of y'all out there that would like to go listen to it.
Yes.
I will remind you that movie is in my top 5 movies of all time.
Excellent. So this will be interesting to see this reboot. I agree with you that I think this reboot is very clever. And just, fast forwarding a bit, this reboot did lead to 2 other movies, so a full trilogy that were based on this storyline. So that's kind of cool. And was very interesting. When was the first time you saw this movie? Did you see it when it first came out?
I did not. I saw it on DVD or on cable shortly thereafter, though. And I have not seen the 2 sequels to it. I would like to, but right now they're not on any streaming platforms that I have available.
Oh, well, when they come out, you need to watch them. They are both as good as this one. Yes.
Okay.
And it continues to get better. It continues, their technology continues to evolve, which is saying a lot, because I do think the motion capture and the computer animation in this movie is excellent. But it continues to get better, and their storylines get even better.
Right.
Yes.
But I can tell you, I love this movie. I think it's a fantastic movie. Of course, there is a lot of CGI, but you kind of can't avoid it with this type of movie. I'd probably rate the CGI like, similar to watching raptors run around in Jurassic Park. But the reason I like this movie so much is that not only does it tie into the themes and motifs of the original Planet of the Apes with Charlton Heston, it gives a double whammy punch because of my love for animals. And there's a huge, cruelty to animal aspect in this film that just tugs at me very hard. You see where I'm going there? It's like they took the powers of the original themes and then just intensified them by adding yet this other layer to it that wasn't necessarily in the first film.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, by adding this sort of jaded corporate villain guy at the top who doesn't really care about the animals at all. I mean, it starts out with a very terrifying trap. I mean, the way they capture the apes at the beginning is really traumatic.
Right. I mean, I can see, PETA just freaking out, and I have a little bit, of that in me, that makes me angry. It makes me want to hurt people.
Yeah, and the way they play the cruelty that's at the ape sanctuary, that leads to Caesar's entire motivation is brutal. And although one of the big keys of it, I mean, I'm sure most of our keys are going to be references back to the original Planet of the Apes of Charlton Heston, but the torture or the suffering that Caesar goes through at the ape sanctuary is very similar to what Taylor went through in Planet of the Apes, even down to the water hose through the bars and everything else. So, but yeah, I can see how if you are a compassionate animal lover, that this is a very this would be traumatic. And
you want those monkeys to get loose and start killing people. I mean,
yeah,
it was on the San Francisco Bridge.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned CGI, and I said how excellent it was, and you said you can tell it's CGI. I think you can in places, but there are other places where you can't. And I think it's excellently done. But one of the things I think that is a hybrid of both, where you kind of go, oh, that had to be CGI because they didn't train a monkey to do that, kind of thing. But it also is very effective, is in the way they motion captured Serkis's expressions. He does so much of this movie with no dialogue, and the way you see him react with fear, with anger, with compassion, all the emotions, all in his eyes and his eyebrows, and just really cool the way they did it.
When I was referring to the CGI that wasn't as good, I'm referring to whenever you see mass amounts of them. Like when they're escaping or when they're on the bridge, that kind of stuff's when it starts looking a little fake to me. But any of the solo stuff's brilliant.
Yeah, credit where credit's due. The animation was done by Weta Digital, the same guys that did all the Lord of the Rings. Essentially, Peter Jackson created that company for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Actually, for his Gore one before that. What's the one with the lawnmower where he chews up the the zombies with the lawnmower? Do you remember that movie?
Are you talking about Dead Alive?
Yeah. That's where a lot of the early effects guys came from. They ended up incorporating into Weta, and they had done King Kong prior to this. So they had learned a lot of monkey stuff, again with Andy Serkis, before it. But from a tech point of view, this was the first movie where CGI was actually done practically on location. So when they're on the bridge, they're actually on the bridge and in motion capture suits to allow it.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I read somewhere where the original ending was too down and they decided to refilm it, and they called Serkis and I can't think of the guy's name, James Franco, and and like one other person back to refilm the ending. So I guess they just redid the effects then and there when they refilmed that scene. Yeah, because they could. Well, they changed it a little bit because they had a whole dynamic that was different with the way I can't remember his name, but the actual gorilla, how he died and how everything happened was different. Right. And what you Franco do see and what I can in the original. Yeah. And what I can say is there's a great shot when he has liberated them, and we're talking tech now, but somewhat story. But they get on one of the streetcars in San Francisco that we're all used to, Rice-A-Roni or whatever. But and they're all on the top of it, and they come up over the crest of a hill and look down, and you can see the Golden Gate Bridge in the foreground. That's where they're going. And the way they do that shot, you see all of the principal groups. You see Caesar in the front, but then you see the orangutan, the gorilla, it's other. It's like a poster shot. Yeah, and it's such a poster shot. I was just about to say that. Yeah. Sorry. But what's cool and what I was getting at is once you see the other movies, that becomes the core group of characters that go through all three movies. Oh, okay. So it's very interesting to see. But doesn't the gorilla die? Of the story. Well, the gorilla does, yeah. But I mean, they slowly die off, but that's the core group. You know, you're following Caesar through these adventures. Again, I thought so effects wise, I think all the way through it works. Performance wise, I'm not usually a James Franco fan, but I thought he did a fine job with this. There wasn't anything out of it that I went, that doesn't work for me. Yeah, he's okay. I don't mind James Franco. I kind of like him, actually, especially some of his personal stuff that I see out there. I've got some casting stuff, if that's where we're... Yeah, let's go into that. That's cool. Direction. Yep. I don't have a lot, and a lot of what I do have is somewhat ambiguous to me because I don't know who they are. But I did do some research. Caesar, of course, is Andy Serkis. Maurice is Karen Konoval. Maurice is, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but There are so many homages to the original 1968 Planet of the Apes in this movie that you really can't list them all. There's that many. And this is one of them. Maurice Evans played Zaius in the original. Mm-hmm. And that's a nod to him.
Who was an orangutan.
Right. And then you have Bright Eyes was Terry Notary, and Bright Eyes is what Zira called Taylor in the original 1968. Buck/Ape was Richard Ridings. Koba/Ape was Chris Gordon. Cornelia/Ape, Devin Dalton, obviously an homage to Cornelius from the original.
And she has a much bigger part in the sequels.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Alpha was Jake Puto. All right, here we go. Will Rodman, played by James Franco. Shia LaBeouf and both Tobey Maguire were considered.
Yeah, I think
that I would like them as much as I like Franco.
Tobey might be okay to do it, but Franco has a little bit of a stronger authority edge to him in his style, so I think they made the right choice.
Right.
He's in between those two. I would think if we were putting those three on a graph, of strength, so to speak, Shia LaBeouf will be way over here because he's out there and he's weird and he's avant-garde kind of thing. Franco's in the middle, and then you got Maguire on the other end, in my opinion. But, yeah, I think they were right in choosing Franco.
Caroline Aranha was played by Frida Pinto. There were 3 other girls that auditioned for that part. Their names are Dilshad Vadsaria, Crisel Almeida, and Artiman. And I just wrote down that they're TV actresses. I have no idea they've done a lot of TV, but I don't know them. So, Charles Rodman, the John Lithgow character with Alzheimer's. You're going to love this. These 3 people were considered. Christopher Walken, which I could probably see. Robert Englund, which is kind of mind-boggling because you really don't associate him with A-level movies other than the Nightmare franchise.
Right.
And lastly, Tim Conway.
Interesting.
Let that settle in.
Those are some bizarre choices, but it might be interesting to see. I think it would be really interesting to see England do it. I think he could have done it. This was kind of
I think England's a Shakespeare. I think he's a classically trained actor, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, so one of my notes was this was kind of one note for both John Lithgow and Brian Cox. I mean, both of them are well known for other character roles that they've done that have been incredible. I mean, Lithgow won an Oscar for,
Garb.
What is it? Yeah, Garb. For World According to Garb.
World According to Garb. Mm-hmm.
And
Brian Cox is awesome. I like him in everything.
Yeah, and both of them are really, really strong actors, and they basically just played kind of smaller supporting roles in this. Even though the father's presence is really important to the storyline, he's not really in a lot and doesn't really do a lot in the story.
But I think Lithgow's fantastic in it.
Oh, he is. Love the scene where he's about to give him the gas injection of the newest upgrade of the drug, and he just grabs his hand and looks at him and just shakes his head no. And just the way he does it, you just go, oh, man, it was just really good. That was nice. It took me this time, because the first time I watched this movie, it was actually on a plane. And I was looking for something to watch, and they didn't have any good science fiction. So naturally, I picked this one and went, oh, my God, the last one sucked so bad. This is going to be terrible, and really enjoyed it. But that entire time, I did not realize that the Dodge Landon character, the mean, cruel ape sanctuary guard or whatever, was Tom Felton. Right. And I kept watching the first time I watched, I kept going, who is that dude? I keep thinking I know who that is and could not remember. And then suddenly, oh, it's Harry Potter's nemesis. So, it worked for me.
Okay. I'll believe you. I don't know that, but okay.
Oh, yeah. He was in all 10 of the Harry Potter movies. He's Draco Malfoy.
Okay.
So, yeah. You're not going to tell me you haven't watched the Harry Potter movies, are you, Tim? You're not going to say that,
I've only seen the first one.
Oh, my gosh. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Continue
okay.
with your casting.
All right. John Landon, who you just mentioned, was played by Brian Cox. Three other actors were considered. One was Danny DeVito, which sounds like Tim Burton to me.
Yep.
Michael Douglas, and a character actor named Kevin Dunn. And I recognized Kevin Dunn, but I couldn't tell you what he's been in.
I think they did right there. That was pretty smart. I mean, I think a lot of people listening will know Brian Cox just from Bourne, of course, because he was in that. But he's done so much good stuff, and this was another.
He played Lecter before Anthony Hopkins did.
Yeah,
in the original
Red Dragon,
Manhunter.
Yeah,
Manhunter.
Yeah, Manhunter. But he's got a great career. He's done a lot of good stuff, and again, I think he's okay in this, but this is kind of a kind of part for him. I mean, this movie's carried by Caesar. It's his point of view. It's his story. Even though Franco is the lead, Caesar is the emotional heart and everything. I think all the way through it, in my opinion.
Right. And at one point when they were beginning, they had not cast anybody, and someone said, "You have to get Circus. You have to. Mm-hmm. You have no choice." Basically,
he's made his career doing this. He's really good at it, from Gollum to King Kong. I mean, he's just brilliant at bringing these characters, a lot of them with non-verbal skills or truncated verbal skills, to life. And giving them character and heart and everything. And it's really interesting. Once you see the other two, you might want to go back and watch this again. It was really interesting watching the birth of these other ape characters in the franchise, like Koba and Rocket and Maurice. All three are really important to the franchise. And just seeing how they came about is interesting as well in the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew that Koba would go further. I wasn't sure about Maurice, but yeah.
Yeah, Maurice, you know, they each form. It's kind of interesting. They kind of form this. Rocket, Maurice, and Circus are kind of like the Star Trek Kirk, Spock, McCoy thing, where cool. Caesar kind of has to use the wisdom of Maurice to temper him sometimes, but then he also has to, calm down Rocket, who's wanting to just run and do and chase and be silly, and stuff. So it's very interesting to put them together.
Yeah.
And I know I keep talking about the other two movies, but this one was good. The other two just expound on it so much more.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've been kind of scoping for about 6 months to see if they've been landed anywhere that I could stream them. But I may end up just renting them.
Yeah, I think you should. I think they're really good.
Dodge Landon, you mentioned, was played by Tom Felton. There were 3 other in that auditioned for the part. I don't know them outright, but I can give you examples of what they play on television or in movies. One was Brandon Routh, who plays the Atom in DC's Legends of whatever.
Okay.
I'm talking about the DC, one of the, the Green Arrow and the Flash
DC
and all that.
Superheroes, yeah.
Right, yeah, he plays the Atom. Kellen Lutz, who was from Twilight, another series I do not watch. That's a movie series, not a television series. But then there was Stephen R. McQueen, who is Steve McQueen's grandson, that is apparently a lead on Vampire Diaries. And I did not know that Stephen McQueen even had a grandson, but he does, and he auditioned and lost to Tom Felton. Lastly, the only other casting news I had was the Stephen Jacobs part, played by David Oilio. I can't say this name. Oyellowo. Olio. Also considered were Idris Elba, Jamie Foxx, and Jimon Hunsu, if I pronounce that one right.
Interesting. Any of them could. I thought he did a really good job of playing the greedy capitalist, director sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the others might have been more expensive. I don't know.
Yeah, agreed.
Because they're a little more known.
Especially Jamie Foxx.
Right.
Yeah.
And Idris. Yeah. Yep. So that's all I have for casting news.
Okay, well, why don't we spin briefly just on what you liked, scene or character or motivation. What did you like about the movie?
I love not just the name allusions to the first film, but I love just the little, I don't know, there was just lots of homages to the first film that I love.
There's so many. I mean, he starts out with the whole, it's a madhouse when he goes to the ape sanctuary, and there's a lot of homages back to the original.
Right. And when he says, get your damn dirty
Your stinking paws off me, yeah.
Your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape. Then I can't remember, but they follow it up with another line from the movie. I mean, directly after that. And I was like, wow, they are really doing this well.
Yeah, that's one thing I agree with you. I think that they did, the homages aren't overt. They don't slap you in the face and make you go, oh, or corny or anything like that. They work like Caesar when they're doing the montage of him growing up and he is putting the puzzle together and you see that it's of the Statue of Liberty. Just little stuff like that you catch and go, it's almost like an Easter egg homage without being too overt.
Right. I mean, even the first movie in 1968 did that stupid little scene where it's hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil.
Mm-hmm.
If you pluck that scene out of that movie, I wouldn't mind at all because it's kind of silly. There's none of that in this movie at all.
No. If you didn't know the original, it still works, and you don't have a problem. If you know it, it gives you just a little layer to it that's kind of shows how much the screenwriters actually cared about telling a good story.
Yeah. So. Another thing I absolutely love is I preach all the time about how I love small movies with small casts. And this movie, even though it's not, feels like it is because there's just a handful of principles, and even the next door neighbor that comes in earlier in the story plays out all the way through to the end. I mean, he's there for a reason. He's not thrown in there to be just a carbon or just a cutout bad guy. He's there for a reason because he's basically the reason there are going to be sequels, or at least part of the reason.
Basically because that's interesting. Yeah, because it's like they streamlined the storytelling down to a point where everybody had a integral part. Mm-hmm. There was a reason for things to happen, and reason for characters to be there. Yeah, I think that's very true. That's a good point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I love that. I love the scene, obviously, on the Golden Gate Bridge with the fog and the battle.
Mm-hmm. It's well staged and well done, to be effective. Mm-hmm. Although it is two of my minor points that I quibble with, me and my logic thing. First of all, where did all those monkeys and things come from? Because it looks like he has like 300 people, 300 monkeys.
He went around busting them out of jail. He went to the zoo and he went
to one zoo. That was... No, the lab. Yeah,
but they didn't show the circus, and they didn't show the,
Well, the other thing too is that's my quibble is the whole battle itself. Okay, only the apes that were in the ape sanctuary have been given the drug, so they're the only ones that should be intelligent, and yet all of them act intelligently. All of them act like they've been military trained, and here they go, and da-da-da. You don't see one sitting in the corner going, no, those are bullets. I'm running away. I don't even know what that is.
I just I felt like maybe they were soldiers or drones, just following commands. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we kind of have to give it,
Yeah.
But yeah, a couple of those big, huge, like drone type shots of showing them go over, San Francisco, and I'm like, there's like 300 freaking monkeys here, primates here. How is this possible? And even down to going into the street and throwing spears and all of that. I mean, it got a little. I was going, you might be close to being weird here, but no, they did it mostly because we care so much about Caesar's story.
Mm-hmm. That was great how they threw those spears, but I was like, how the hell did they yank those things off a fence? Those things don't just yank off of fences.
Yeah, no. Well, and that was the other thing too. They kind of play with the strength of these primates. Mm-hmm. There are times when they hit somebody, they jump on top and hit him 3 or 4 times, and he gets up and says, "Get off me!" And then another time where he throws somebody a car across the bridge. You're going, okay, how strong are they?
Yeah, but it's one of those movies where the story is strong enough that you do forgive it some of its
yes.
You give it suspension of disbelief in some of these occasions because it's not a bad movie. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
For sure.
I like 2 things about it really that we haven't mentioned already. One, I do like the whichever one plays the gorilla. I forgot his name. Buck is the gorilla.
He's played by Richard Ridings.
His death scene is great because it's almost like they have this nonverbal communication with each other. And he says like, "Thank you for getting me out. And I'm glad I got to die like a hero." I mean, all of this stuff is said in their gestures and their eyes. It's so cool.
Well, it's funny that you said thank you for getting me out because that was one of the things I forgave them is that he comes busting out of that cage. I'm like, well, why didn't he do that before?
Well, because but Caesar opens it up for him.
I think he opens it up in another scene, but then later on he's back in it, and then he just comes busting out. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, but both times Caesar goes over and flips the latch and unlocks him. The first time, he had to get the lay of the land and had to know him, kind of thing, and be gentle. And he went into the cage and actually touched him. But the next time he actually unlocks it so that it happens. But the other thing I liked was I really thought it was cool writing that the same drug that elevates the intelligence of the apes actually kills humans. So it was kind of like that Conquest of the Planet of the Apes thing but tied together, it made as one unit. You know what I mean?
I do exactly. I was just
I
writing
thought that
something,
was cool.
but yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. And which led to one of my keys, too, which was a whole, whatever you want to choose, whether you want to say pandemic or COVID or contact or contagion or whatever. But that whole, I just sneezed blood on you, and now I'm patient 0. So this is going to be bad.
Before we go to the keys, I've got some awards as well as trivia, if you would like.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and do the awards. It was a nominee for visual effects with both Oscars and BAFTAs. I'm assuming it did not win. Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films, it did win for Science Fiction Film, Supporting Actor, which is Circus. I think it's funny that he's supporting. And it was a nominee for Director and Writing for the Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films Academy.
Good.
So those are the awards. I have a feeling some of the latter ones were nominated as well. The original post-credits scene, you know how they did some scenes in the credits to lead up to eventual sequels. One of them had Koba discovering John Landon's shotgun in the woods and learning how to use it. That was interesting.
That is interesting, and that it's interesting once you watch the other two, how that sets up. That's kind of cool. Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that Charlton Heston actually makes an appearance in this movie, even though he's dead.
Yes.
He was on the television set of the Ape Bunkhouse when he played Michelangelo in The Agony and the Ecstasy from 1965.
Yep.
It is also kind of ironic that Will is looking for a cure for Alzheimer's, which is what Charlton Heston died of in 2008.
Oh, I didn't know that. But
Yeah.
that's a good kind of reality homage key, I guess.
Exactly. So that's the trivia I had there. Just thought I'd throw those out there.
Interesting. Those are really good. Yeah, I did have The Agony and the Ecstasy because I remember seeing that when the nice guard was watching the, which is that's kind of a thematic that runs through all three, is Caesar having to realize that there are kind humans and there are good humans, and at the same time that there are cruel and vicious and warlike humans. Mm-hmm. And how do you pick in between? And is it worthy to, because you get the impression that one of the things that he told all of them was don't kill anybody. Right? Yeah. You can beat them up, but don't kill anybody. And the only person that really, is murdered by one of the apes really is when Buck kills the bad CEO guy or when Koba does. He pushes the helicopter.
Don't they kill Dodge, Landon, in the ape house?
Well, that's my accident. Caesar, that's my accident. Caesar didn't mean to do that. He had which also didn't make sense to me from a logical standpoint. I mean, if somebody has a taser staff or a staff like that and you hit them with water, it's not going to spark and kill them.
I was thinking, it's not going to have any more electricity than it already has. So it wouldn't intensify. It might knock you out, but I don't think it would kill you. I was wondering that myself.
Right. But that was an accident. And you could see, again, wordless, totally with expression, you can see that Caesar regretted that. That wasn't what he meant to do.
No. And he, right afterwards, rescues the other guy and puts him in the cell because he recognizes him.
Yeah, puts him in a cell away from all the other.
Right,
yep.
Right.
Yeah, puts him away from all the other apes. There was, but yeah, Koba just pushing that helicopter over and going, bye-bye kind of thing. I was going, okay, that sets him up pretty good too I really don't care about humans at all.
Well, that and the fact that he looks scarred or whatever. Yeah, he's got distinct birthmarks and stuff. Yeah. Well, and from what I understand, and you may have read about this too, apparently this film introduces a fourth type ape, and it is what Kobo is, and it's a bonobos. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, the smaller apes.
Okay, they supposedly get confused with chimpanzees because they look so much alike. But from what I understand, they're the most passive and friendly of the apes. So it's kind of ironic that they made one the main villain in the future film.
Very.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, because they're smaller. They're usually gray, like Koba was. That sort of thing. So that's interesting. What about keys? Did you have a lot of keys for this? I mean, other than all these homages that are out there.
Well, I mean, no, not really. There are a shit ton, obviously, that are within the franchise itself. And that includes all of the movies, even the Tim Burton movie. But you can't, neglect the first movie, obviously, Planet of the Apes from 1968. And then I mentioned Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and so did you, as far as plots. I was wrong earlier. It wasn't the third movie. It was the fourth movie. And it was what this script developed out of. They were originally going to remake it, and then it turned into this, which is probably a good thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a convoluted homage, but it works. But, there's a couple of references to a spaceship and going beyond Mars and all of that. And in Conquest, the reason that the disease happened that made animals intelligent or apes intelligent and killed humans was a a space probe that came back, and also they said something about astronauts lost in space, and I was going, could that be Taylor and his team, going out and coming back, kind of thing, setting up the '68 movie. So there's that.
When did they do that? When did they mention that?
The spaceship?
Yeah.
It's after.
Because I read it, but I don't remember hearing it.
It's two different news broadcasts and one newspaper, and it's all when Franco is in developing the second formula after Caesar has gone to the ape sanctuary.
That's fascinating.
And at first, it's on the television, and there's reading a news article. They're showing the news reporters talking about how man's about to go beyond Mars, yada yada. Then suddenly it's a ship lost in space, astronauts lost ? All that kind of stuff.
Right. So it is. That's basically a huge homage to the first movie. So that's definitely another key.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I had a key. You mentioned it already, but I think we can. If we're talking about, the whole podcast is about references and influences and everything. And, I think Jurassic Park was a huge key for this because it brought animals to life convincingly with humans. And I don't think you would have had this type of story or this storytelling or been able to do this story without the innovations that Jurassic Park did.
Agreed. And I'll take you one step even further and say Jurassic World, because the husband and wife team that wrote this also wrote Jurassic World.
I didn't know that. That's a cool key. That's good.
Yeah, what's his name? Jaffa? Yeah, Jaffa and Amanda Silver.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had two literary keys. One is Jekyll and Hyde, just because of the whole, I've got this experiment, I know it'll work, but they won't let me do it, so I'm going to do it on a human. And it's just instead of himself, he does it on his dad.
But my dad. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one is Flowers for Algernon, which is a classic story of a mentally retarded man who is given an experimental procedure to elevate his intelligence, and he becomes super smart. Algernon changes because it doesn't work, and he starts regressing, which is actually what happens to, Franco's dad in the movie. He starts it actually gets worse after the treatment starts failing, which is very Flowers for Algernon.
Mm-hmm.
I've got. Wait, do you have any more?
I've got one more. It's kind of an off key. It's not direct. I guess it's indirect.
Yeah.
I love that some of these great movies have husband and wife writing teams, and another husband and wife writing team wrote 28 Monkeys, which is one of my favorite science fiction movies. I think it's funny that the word monkeys is in it, but it is also written by a husband and a wife.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. That is an off key, but cool.
Yeah.
I've got a sort of off key like that, which is Project X, which was a Matthew Broderick movie where he was a test pilot. And
I forgot about that movie. That's an old movie.
Remember?
Yes.
Yeah. And
of course, I think I saw War Games with you in a theater, so that's how old we are.
Yeah.
But I do remember Planet X, or Project X.
Project X, and it was something about how he had to rescue the monkeys because they were being tested for, to be killer drones or something. I don't remember. They were test pilots. Or whatever. Mm-hmm. But you reminded me of it just when you mentioned earlier about, caring about the monkeys and caring about the animal rights sort of thing.
Right.
And then my last key is that hit me just on a personal level was the whole torture of Caesar and the way Caesar's treated in the ape sanctuary reminded me of Elephant Man. How the guards end up bringing people by to look at you and make fun of you and everything else, the way they brought the girls in at that one point. And they even do that in Elephant Man. The keeper brings the girls in to show off, Merrick to them And so it reminded me of that as a key.
Oh, okay. I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's all I have for that one.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of keys, although I felt bombarded by them. That's kind of ironic in itself. But it's because they were all self-induced keys, I guess you would say, or contained within the franchise world. I mean, this is a huge franchise. I think we mentioned this when we did the episode in the first season. I mean, how many other series are there that are this big besides Star Trek and Star Wars? That just keep
as far as franchises,
giving. And they keep giving. I mean, granted, you mentioned Harry Potter, and it's a large franchise, but I don't know that it's going to continue the way these others have. I think it might be encapsulated somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, the theatrical version is doing very well now, and there's talk of another book or possibly another movie, but we'll see. Another one that has a lot of staying power is, of course, the MCU, and its branches off to everything from television to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all of that.
Well, I hadn't really thought about comics, but yeah, you're right. The MCU is enormous.
Yeah.
And it's just
but Apes, I think, will always
stories.
be. Apes, I think, will always be one of the best science fiction franchises ever. The way they kept reinventing the story to fit the new movie, and I think that's going to I was amazed when I saw Beneath the Planet of the Apes and went, "Oh wow, this was a great idea." And then they did Conquest and Battle and Escape and all of it. So yeah. So
yeah, I can't remember any of the Apes movies beyond Beneath, really. It's been
you had Escape, which was the whole time travel setup. They basically, Cornelius and Zira basically resurrected Taylor's ship, and somehow in ape technology figured out how to go back in time.
Ape
went
technology.
Back in time.
They lived in like Adobe caves.
Right.
They'll just build a rocket ship.
Went back in time, got horribly oppressed in the 60s and then in the 70s, and then their child was kept by Ricardo Montalban at the zoo, and he was Caesar.
Corinthian
Caesar ended up creating the Conquest, which was the battle, and then going on into Battle of the Apes, which was the years later fighting for supremacy of the ape world kind of thing.
But then like Star Trek, you also had the animated series and you had the television series.
Yes. Yes, with Cornelius. So yeah, you had that one.
Right. Lots of monkey movies out there.
But we both obviously really like this one. We would recommend it to all you guys out there listening. Hopefully you've seen it before you listen to us. But if you have seen it and like it, go on to watch the other two because they're really good. And if you agree with us or don't agree with us, let us know. Email us, write us, review us, subscribe us, whatever you do to us, kind of thing.
I'm sorry,
like
I'm just looking. The Rodman character was named after Rod Serling. I just realized that. Because Rod Serling wrote the original. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
So the keys just keep shaking out. Yeah. But like you said, this is the first episode of our third season. We do a thank you for being a part of it. We've got a maxed out season planned for you. We've grown from 28 weeks to 40 weeks. That's 20 sci-fi movies and 20 horror movies, with maybe a few double features thrown in there. So we'll be trying to alternate those for you folks out there.
So stick around. Come back and check us next week when we have a little horror feature for you.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Tim, thanks so much.
Thank you.